Welcome to Dip into the Ink, the show where me and sometimes a guest go in depth into a comic book page by page. Hello, dear Crespo, my biological father, my second most recurring guest on this show. How are you? How's the day?
I'm good. Is it still Rudy is the most recurring?
Yeah, but we stopped doing Transformers. We just did the first arc, which was like the first 6 issues. So
Hmm.
if you do 2 more issues, you're the most recurring guest.
Okay,
Is
okay.
that the goal?
I think I can do that. Yeah.
And then you'll stop. You're like, I'm done. I just want to do the most recurring
Yeah.
person. But yeah, today we're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man #5. Very exciting. Do you have anything you want to talk about, or you want to just dive right into it?
No, we could just dive right in. Yeah.
Let's dive right into it. Now we're recording differently, so normally, so if the angles are weird while I edit this, don't worry about it. But issue 5 will open up to this. It's this cover with Green Goblin in the back. And very interestingly, it's depicting a graveyard, and then there you have Harry Osborn and Ben, and they're walking through like a graveyard, sort of symbolic. I feel of they both had losses. It's this whole thing uh, that I think is interesting. But what do you think of the cover?
It's nice. It's the is it the most low? No, it's not the most low key one. The most low key one was
It
last
was the last
week's.
one, yeah, where it's just like
Um,
a cover of a newspaper or something.
yeah, yeah. This one's somber. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a little somber. It tells you the tone of the comic and maybe characters.
Maybe
You know,
characters.
not inherently good or bad, but just tonally. Kind of a thing we're going to be dealing with here.
So far, these covers haven't been too like clickbaity in a way, but
Yeah.
next cover we'll see. But we'll go to the first page. It's months ago, and it's a night in New York, and there's some penthouse, and there's a bunch of rich and fancy people. And we see Norman. He's conversing with someone, and he's gonna. I guess that's his wife, Emily, or his assistant. I'm not entirely sure.
I'm pretty sure it's his wife.
His wife. All right,
Yeah. I think it's Harry's mom.
it's Harry's mom.
Yeah.
It's always funny. I feel like you might have more thoughts about Harry than me. Is there ever mentions of his mom? It's always about him and his dad.
Yeah, but like let's say recently, like not so I think this is the first like
Hmm.
appearance of her in a long time.
Hmm.
There's always like stuff about how Norman's not like the type of guy to be um like allowing his wife to share the spotlight, I guess.
Hmm.
In the films, uh out of the two versions of Harry Osborn that we've seen, only the Raimi ones even mention like the mom leaving, and that's
Hmm.
because Norman Osborn's a dick, like
Yeah,
even before he becomes a supervillain.
which
So he
is the
talks
point
about
of
women in
Norman
that is
Osborn.
like, yeah, he's a real piece of work in that. So
Mhm.
I don't know, the fact that he's even together with a woman here into his adulthood is maybe a sign that he's not the guy he would have been, that we know and distrust, you know?
But this is like a silly thing, but you know that phrase, "You marry your parents." Well, I mean, Harry's also with the blonde, so that's all I
Hmm.
gotta say. It's interesting, but
Yeah.
he's calling, he's upset, he's angry, and he's calling Harry and like, "Dad, sorry I called. I thought I called mom." He's like, "Where are you?" And we cut to the city, and where Harry's just walking, and it's very interesting that we settle in a dynamic very immediately. He's like, "I'll be there." He's like, "Harry, yes, Dad. What name do you bear?" What name do you bear?" "Osborne." "Okay, it's a great name. It means something." And he goes, "Harry, do you know what my favorite memory of you is?" He's like, "Yeah, that time we played catch." And Norman's like, "No, that's a little boy. That's the memory of a child. My favorite memory of you is the day you finally started acting like a man and like an Osborne. The problem is, it hasn't happened yet." And I'm just like, fuck, okay. And then he goes on this tirade where he's like, "How long are you gonna make us wait?" And then while he's berating his son, there's a huge explosion, the terrorist bombing in New York. And the end of that page is just Harry's face, like aghast, like, oh. And I feel like this is very necessary to kind of fill you in on what type of Harry Osborn this is going to be. And I feel bad for all Harrys. I think the most loving dad I've ever seen, like dad son relationship I've ever seen, is in the PS Spider-Man games.
Yeah, that one seems to be, I don't know, there's something there. Something's
Mm-hmm.
like not right there, but we haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen enough of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Like
But
there's some
it is
kind of
like
love
he
there.
does actually care about his son in that one,
There's
it
some
seems.
affection, whether it be less about his son and more about his son's relationship to him and like what the son meant to his wife, because I know the wife passed in that game. In fact, the only time just going back to the mom thing, the only time I remember Harry's mom being mentioned is in the PS4 Spider-Man game when I think it was like a side quest where Peter had to restore these like facilities that Harry's mom put together before she died or something, and then it was very nice little story beat. But yeah,
Yeah.
Harry looks at this explosion, and before we cut to the next page, these couple pages, these sequence of events, what's your thoughts on them?
Well, furthermore, like there is mention directly in the
Mm,
Spider-Man 2 game, the PlayStation 5 Spider-Man 2 game, where you play a flashback story to reestablish like Harry and Peter's relationship because we don't see him in the first game.
yeah, at the beginning,
Um,
right?
yeah, yeah, and at the very end of that, Norman shows up in a helicopter and tells him about his mom. I forget she dies there or she's sick already, and it's not looking good, but you know what's about to happen. And yeah, these pages, yeah, Norman's still like a dick, just
Mm-hmm.
not like I guess not mustache twirling evil. This is a more like refined, like this is
Mm-hmm.
like centrist Democrat evil, like we were keeping up appearances.
Relatable.
Yeah, it's not Republican evil. Um, but it's still I'm still using that word evil like yeah, I like that there's still an angle on that
Mm-hmm.
character. um and like at this point we just know Harry Osborn is um we still don't know anything about him besides he just kind of he didn't grow up yet,
Mm-hmm.
even though he's an adult now. That probably is not going to have any ramifications for his development for what's about to happen to him because we know
Mm-hmm.
his parents died, and we see them die like immediately after that.
And
So,
in a way, so does he. Like not face to face, but he sees the explosion.
mhm,
And I think there's an interesting callback because in the first issue, when everyone shows up to Times Square for that memorial service and they let Harry speak, Harry specifically goes on about, oh, one of my favorite memories with my dad was when we tried to throw a ball and like neither of us like sports, but it was just something you did. And in that moment, it was just me and dad. And it's interesting to see that being referenced back here because his father goes, "What's my proudest moment?" Like, and he's like, "Oh, that ball." No, it's not. Like instantly, that dynamic is kind of established, and there's a callback there. I think that's just very interesting, and I'm, I'm a little conflicted because I want more of Peter, but also I'm really glad we're getting this insight into Harry, especially because we've mentioned on the show before. Harry's been gone from the comics for a while, so we need to like a reintroduction to this type of version of this character, you know.
mhm.
So I'm really enjoying that. But we go to sort of the recap page. The diabolical genius known as the Maker created his ideal Earth by systematically preventing anyone from ever becoming a superhero. When Tony Stark discovered the true history of the world, the Maker's Council perpetrated a terrible attack on New York City in Stark name. Two of the victims in that attack were Norman Osborn, CEO of Oscorp, and his wife Emily. Now their son, Harry Osborn, is about to learn the truth of the world in a quest for justice along the way, eventually leading him to a masked vigilante named Peter Parker. And that's sort of our little recap. Writer Jonathan Hickman, guest artist David Messina. Messina, you're back. He's back from the last issue.
I think this is important if I may interject
Yeah,
too, because
interject.
you and I had that conversation about like, well, the next issue is obviously going to be big or
Mhm,
whatever. I don't remember if we knew he was staying on for this one or
mhm.
the next one, because Marco Gicchetto, he's doing
Chano's
all the
back for
covers
next
still.
issue. He's back for
Yeah.
the next issue.
So that means like, okay, so then they're probably doing
Mhm,
something big for that one. We'll mention it again, but that is like the culmination of this first
mhm.
arc, they said, or this first chapter or whatever.
And it's not, once again, I want to say Messina's art isn't bad at all. It's just there's such I go from one art to another art that are objectively not similar, and it
Mhm.
just throws me off. But that's neither here nor there. Color artist Matthew Wilson, letters VC Corey Petit and VC Joe Sabino, and issue 5. And then we cut back to a few weeks after that. We're in some sort of law offices and we're meeting with an attorney, and this attorney Bill and Harry and Gwen are both there. And it kind of talks about how they're kind of everything is going to Harry. Everything that is under the sun, Oscorp, all the properties, everything is going. And I believe they state that he and Gwen are both on the board. And there's an interesting moment because he's doing all this legal minutia mumbo jumbo, and they ask, "Is there anything else?" And the lawyer kind of goes, "Harry, this was delivered to my office this morning for you," and it's sort of a card that has sort of this chess piece. I think the that's the queen or the king piece.
It's the
I'm not.
king.
Is it the king? Okay,
It's
thank
the
you. It's
king,
the
yeah.
king. Oh, I wonder who it could be from.
Yeah.
uh, I feel so unintellectual by not knowing that was the king. I thought that was the priest.
No,
Like,
you
is that
you
the
are, don't worry. I'm just kidding. No, no, no. It's I mean, not everyone plays chess. It's fine, you know.
I have a choice board in my room, but let's not talk about that.
Oh my God.
But Harry's just like, "What is it?" And the lawyer's like, "I have no idea what it means, but I know who it's from." And then we go to the next day. Harry shows up. He has this little invitation. He gets checked by some guards, and then the assistant with the eye patch gives him a little look. And Harry goes, "Well, I'm here." And then we go to this uh it's a little, oh my god, Kingpin. He's in a hot tub. And I'm just like, ooh, like he has his arm out. I'm just like, I could wiggle in right there.
My God.
I'm just saying, powerful man. Oh my god. If I had a powerful connection, do you know how many green cards I could buy, how many vacations I could pay for? I'm just saying.
Oh my God.
There I don't see no Vanessa next to him. That's all I'm saying. I'll jump in that comic.
That's true. That's true.
But Kingpin's like, right on time. Do you know who I am? And Harry, they play a little game where he's like, you're Wilson Fisk, business magnate. And Fisk is like, can you tell me what they don't? And he's like, well, you're the secret kingpin. You're the shadow governor of the greater New York territory, which reminds me that the way the maker set up this world, there aren't like countries, there are territories. And I often forget that when reading this, just because New York is so New York.
Hmm.
I need to go back to that map. I think I forget which issue it is. I think it might have been in the precursor issues that was all about the universe. But I need to look back in the map and see all the different like territories that are split up.
Yeah,
But
me too.
mm,
Because I don't remember the exact setup of that either.
but I think a good chunk of America was retained. I forget about the West Coast, but Fisk kind of fills him in. He's like, next week I'll be elevated to so many different positions, and you should be very pleased. And it's a really interesting interaction because Harry's like, I'm not my father, even though I'm gonna try to pretend to be. I don't know what you want from me because I'm not him. I can't give you whatever you need. And Fisk kind of responds like, I'm gonna sell you Stark Industries. I don't want to be in that limelight. I don't want that heat. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with technology. You can have it. I think that's interesting. Just to sort of, it feels like everything's falling into Harry. It's falling onto Harry, and I feel like there's a difference between making a choice and falling into situations. And I think there's a parallel between Peter and Harry right now in the sense that Peter's choosing this. He was given the opportunity. He's choosing to be a hero. He's choosing to try to make a difference. But with Harry, it's sort of like he's falling into this. And of course, you can choose to continue falling into something, but it's kind of just everything's happening around him and he's kind of absorbing it. I think that's just an interesting parallel between their two stories.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I would agree with
mhm.
that.
But before we go to the next page, when we check out whatever is in the Stark vaults, do you have any thoughts on this interaction, these couple pages?
Um, I don't know. I like when different artists design Kingpin. He's just like
Mm,
such a he's not superhuman, but he is, like we all treat
Mhm.
him as such. Like he's just very large, like he's comically large. Like
He's
his hand
very
is the size of like Harry's
ahead,
head.
yeah.
Yeah, he's
Like you
like
see them
insane.
standing next to each other, and it's just like he's huge. He's not huge like into the Spider-Verse huge, but he's like a
Hmm.
big man. Like he could be he's like two linebackers
Hmm.
from any team from football. So it's just insane. But yeah, I do enjoy this art. I'm just like I miss Shadows Heart, but I do really like this
Yeah,
because
no,
that
I do too. I do too.
Mhm,
But this ain't half bad. And then
mhm,
I guess this started answering my questions about like whether or not Harry Osborn is he like angling something for
mhm,
the makers at one point? Like I think we were like worried, like, okay, like what type of Harry Osborn is this gonna be? And I think
mhm,
you and I both theorized that it would be like vigilantism gone too far, maybe. Like just because he didn't have the
mhm,
equipment that Peter had with a loving family and
mhm,
like being raised well and understanding of the world because of his privilege. And then this signified to me like, okay, well, he's not going to be like an outright villain, an outright
mhm,
antagonist. It's going to be, if he is an antagonist down the line, it's going to be different. It's not just going to be like I have to defeat you, you know. It's
mhm.
going to be complicated.
And I think I mean we touched on this slightly earlier. Part of the reason the Green Goblin in those Raimi movies is the movie is really good is because he's a terrible, awful person, and the whole Goblin thing just kind of exacerbates that. It just kind of gives him the freedom to act that out. So it's not like he turned crazy; he was already a horrible person.
Hmm.
And it's interesting here that that sort of crutch of like Goblin serum isn't in this story. This is all
Yeah.
Harry. This is all who he is and who he's trying to be. And I think that's more interesting, not maybe not more interesting, but I like it more than like a Goblin serum because I feel like people often say like, well, it's the serum, it's like him going crazy, it's this, it's that, and it's like, no, this is all Harry.
Yeah. And I agree. I think some people like I don't know. I just heard so many defenses for so long about like, well, the villains went crazy. What are you supposed to do?
Mm-hmm,
Like when like Electro dies in Amazing Spider-Man 2 or something like that.
mm-hmm,
And it's like, well, they're not real.
mm-hmm,
Someone wrote them that way. Ideally, you want to write them in a way that's in keeping with a character that's hopefully established relatively
mm-hmm,
soon to the start of the story. And if you could just hand wave away as like anything being like, well, it's just they just went crazy, and it's like it's not interesting, but it's also just it's fucking lazy and
yeah,
stupid. And sorry, it doesn't work. Jamie Foxx innocent for that, by
mm-hmm.
the way, though. I like him as Electro. He got a bad rap for that.
It's very much that comic book trope of like they went crazy and now they can do whatever the plot needs them to do. Like
Yeah,
number
and
one,
it's
Scarlet
just
Witch. She went
yeah,
crazy, and that it's just a tired trope.
yeah. Well, are you talking WandaVision or Doctor Strange? Because I can go to bat for Doctor Strange
Oh,
Wanda,
I
or
meant
just like
comics
in
in general.
general.
I meant comics
Okay,
in
yeah,
general.
yeah. Well, comics and women they tended to treat them poorly forever.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks. I mean, look at Dark Phoenix. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like oh, the woman gets too powerful, and like look, that's a very like
Mm-hmm.
generalization of what happens with that story. But like, woman gets too powerful, she has to die.
Mm-hmm.
That is what happens, though. It's like
Like, oh,
it
the
doesn't.
moment you're strong, you have to die.
Yeah, it's like that doesn't have to be that way. It's none of
Mm-hmm.
this is real. Like you could change that outcome. I
But
don't know.
as for the WandaVision and Doctor Strange stuff, I can at least enjoy that because I can see the road that character kind of has because that of Strange and of Wanda, well, specifically Wanda, her path is in chunks and some of them are missing and some of them are leaps and bounds, but at least there's like some semblance of a direction for that character. Whether or not you like that direction, I think you can kind of piece together it.
Hmm.
So that's a different story. I feel those movies are a different story. I feel,
Yeah.
but back to the comic. Back to the comic. We have another cut 2 weeks later, and you see that Gwen and Harry are with the scientist and they open them to this event and they kind of talk about how hard it was to kind of break into it. And there's a funny line where Gwen's like, digging through these old men's trash is going to take forever, Harry. We should have just with all we have to do, we should probably just, and then he shows a light, and there's like three Iron Man suits right there. And he's just like, look, like, oh shit. And it's funny because I feel like they didn't really expect to find anything at all, and now there's just a bunch of fucking Iron Man suits. And this little scientist with this military haircut, I don't know how to describe it. It's like high and tight with glasses. And he's like, oh, look at all this tech. Like, I'm so excited. And they're kind of going through all this different stuff. And they kind of talk about like, oh, what are we looking at? And you can see that they're kind of back into it, and there's history folders. And we find out right now that Gwen says Otto, and he's like, it's Dr. Octavius. Otto, yes. And it's like, oh, okay, here's Octavius. The audience who don't know, we had no connections, so I was afraid I lost him. But Gwen's like, oh, you need to sign the NDA. And Harry's like, Gwen, Otto has an NDA. And she's like, no, he's gonna need a new one with more teeth. Like you need to sign 7 more because this is high tech shit. And there's a lot of fun moments. She's like, that's right. And he's like, because if I don't, I can't play with all the new toys. And she's like, that's right, no new toys for you. And there's a little bit of a menacing pay panel at the end where he's like smiling. He's like, where do I sign? It was like, all right, we got audio in here. And then we do another time jump 4 months ago, and they're working on the Goblin suit. Once again, I do enjoy this little high tech Goblin suit. I'm glad that we could. I remember in the first issue where like that Stark tech on his shoulder, like we can point that out. So it's nice seeing that brought back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Otto's here too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, one of the definitive versions, obviously from the movies as well. But I do like when he starts off like kind of on a like a lowly, not like a henchman, but like a
Mm-hmm.
lowly like scientist who kind of just like maybe he's pushed around a little bit like
Mm-hmm.
Spectacular Spider-Man or she is like a really strong number 2 to Kingpin like in
Mm-hmm.
Into the Spider-Verse, which is a lot of fun. We don't see that character die, so she should come back. Um, but yeah, I'm interested to see what this version does because maybe this version doesn't become uh Doctor Octopus.
Mm-hmm.
That's entirely within the realm of possibility. They could just be a thorn in their side.
And that's another thing that I reminds me of the video game, whereas I believe Otto was jilted by Osborn in the game, and it's this whole thing where he's like, "I'm out for revenge," and maybe they could do a similar thing here. Maybe they could work together. We don't know, but the possibilities are endless. But they go through this whole page where they're kind of talking about how everything works, the suits, the bombs, and they kind of look at this almost like this Palantir orb thing. And yeah, I'm such a fucking nerd. I'm sorry. Harry's just like, what is that? And Otto's like, I don't know, but it shows up on the network. And Harry's like, what network? And we cut to another page where apparently this Stark Tech is tracking all the different pieces of Stark Tech that are out there. And he kind of puts on this helmet, and there's a bunch of old, new, dormant tech waking up. And Harry's like, oh, let's find out what the hell these are. So we cut to 3 months ago, and we get a little bit of a flashback where Peter is fucking electrocuted by the shocker for the first time. And Shocker's just like, what an idiot. And Harry shows up and he's like, I think you have something that doesn't belong to you. And Shocker tries to shock him, but the glove shut off. And Harry's just like, because I turned them off, because I'm not here for the money. Where'd you get them? And he's like, I tell you, and I get to keep the money. And he's like, yeah, sure. So it's interesting. He kind of tells the story like, I was robbing this guy's apartment. Turns out he must have just died, had a heart attack or something, sitting in his favorite chair. Anyways, there was this light, and that terrorist kid Stock started talking, and light stopped, and these gloves were just sitting there. So I put them on, and I'm just like, okay, so this isn't even original Shocker. This is just a guy who found the Shocker gloves. I just think that's funny.
Yeah, that to me that feels very Shocker. There's like the smart version of the Shocker who makes his own gloves. There's the dummy henchman. This is like dummy henchman
Mm-hmm.
101. I got a kick out of this too because at first I was like, who could that possibly be? And then like I thought about it for like 5 minutes. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, who is dead in that chair? Like it just never occurred to me right away. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, the real Shocker died, and then this guy
Mm-hmm.
uh just just got him.
He was just
Like he
like,
just
I'll
found
take
him.
it.
So like I guess that works too.
I respect him. He's like, oh, electric gloves, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because this okay, this version of Stark, he's a teen. He doesn't really know too much what he's doing. So I wonder if the maker just had a list of superpowered people, and without knowing whether they
Yeah.
would be good or bad people, Stark was just like, I'm just gonna send all this shit out to everyone. Let's just see what happens. I'm sending
Yeah.
everyone their shit, good or bad. And it's kind of interesting. It's like Shocker got his gloves, but you didn't send Otto octopus arms, or like is it?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because look, it's not going to be a straight one-to-one of our universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in this original timeline for this Ultimate Universe,
Mm-hmm.
um, this Shocker was actually going to be a good guy,
Mm-hmm.
you know? That's
So
like
we don't
that's just a
know,
fun
but
question that we don't need answer, but it's like you can think about now.
mm-hmm. And I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. But that idea of letting things happen to you and choosing to do something is going to come up in a hot minute. But the Shocker puts on the gloves and he tries to knock out Goblin while Goblin's thinking, and wham, and it doesn't do anything, and he beats the shit out of him, and he takes the gloves back. And it's very funny. I like this Shocker. But we cut back to 2 months ago where Peter and Osborn were meeting in the bar for the first time after they kind of met up and had real hot sexual tension. But now they went to a bar. And it's funny because Peter's like, "Oh, I'm a photojournalist. I mostly take pictures of the Daily Bugle." And the second question Harry asks, I'm just saying, is that, "Are you married?" That's all I'm saying. That's interesting. And he's like, "Yeah, you too, right?" And then Harry goes, "Uh-huh, maybe we'll do dinner sometime or something like that." He says something. I'm just like, and there's shadow over his face, making him look very mischievous. And there's a pause in Peter's dialogue, and he goes, "Let's just see how drinks go first." And I'm just like, I need all four of them to go watch Challengers together and
Oh
just
God.
figure it
Great
out.
movie, by the way.
I've heard lots of fun things.
Yeah.
But they have like an awkward moment where they're hanging out at a bar. Harry kind of instigates it and goes, "So, don't you want to know what I do?" Peter says, "You're the most well known person in the city. Everyone knows your name and what you do for a living. I know who you are." And Harry kind of points out, "You're referring to advertising, to social media. I don't really do anything. It doesn't have to do with anything at all what I do for a living." And there's an interesting moment because he says, "Oh, did Tony Stark appear to you out of thin air and give you your suit?" He's like, "Did Tony Stark show up to you?" And Peter's like, "There's more to it, but yeah, did the same thing happen to you?" And Harry goes, "No, I found this all out the hard way." And he kind of talks about how he inherited his father's company. He was given Stark's company, and a quote here is, "I found out that the people who gave me this company might just be the most evil people in the history of the world. And it's very possible that they, not Stark, are who really had my parents' blood on their hand." And going over to the next page, he says, "Which I find unacceptable. So I have a new job." He's like, "Well, why did Stark pick you?" And Peter kind of responds, "Yeah, I was supposed to be someone else, have a different life, which was stolen from me from the same people you're talking about, I'm guessing." He said I was supposed to be a hero, and as soon as he said it, I knew it in my bones. So yeah, of course we're gonna do something about it. That's what heroes do, and they kind of clink their glasses. And that's again kind of that idea of Harry wasn't chosen. He wasn't important enough to be given anything. He everything just fell into him and he allowed it to fall into it. And I think that's really interesting because Harry's been such, I don't know how to vocalize it. It's just the fact that he gave the line, "With great power comes great responsibility." The fact that he was one who had like his father figure killed in front of him. It's almost an inverse in a way of that Spider-Man story with just a different start. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah, because it's like, well, he didn't. Well, you know what? He has great power, but in like
Mm-hmm.
the traditional world sense, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that made him realize like I have to do something with this,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not going to be good for me or anyone else, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it is kind of him like, at least in his eyes, trying to claim his own agency now by like
Mm-hmm.
taking this stuff, but it is taking other people's stuff still, you know. Um, and it's I don't know, it is interesting. It is interesting. Like it is unfortunate, one of those things you have to see how it's going to play out before we really like
Yeah.
start analyzing it. We're just theorizing at this point now, but it's like a fun theorizing that I don't feel like it's fruitless, you know.
Mhm.
because we're still talking about based in character theories, not like Easter egg mumbo jumbo or something.
And we cut to now, and he kind of talks about like, at first I thought it was your suit. We see him like touching his goblin helmet. He's like, at first I thought it was your suit that just gave you powers. I thought you were the suit, but you have some sort of embedded exoskeleton under your skin, and while it's impressive taking it off, well, that had to hurt. And you see that we go to a tied up guy with an eye patch. Oh, turns out Bullseye was sort of the assistant to Fisk. Shout out him. But he is currently being tortured, I suppose. And he says, Harry goes, and the eye, what is that about? And he goes, when my master lost his, my brothers and sisters tore ours out in solidarity. And I'm just like, oh my God, fuck. Okay, well, who's your master? Like, shit. They kind of go back and forth, and Harry's like, you're going to give me answers, you're going to tell me. And there's this really intriguing thing where Bullseye kind of goes, I've seen it all, son, and I promise you, everyone thinks that they want to be a hero until it actually costs something. And it always does. And we make sure of that. And then we get to see what you really are. And the cost of heroism is something that I feel like is repeated within Peter Parker's life for all iterations. And, you know, once again, something that normally happens with Peter being attributed and thrown at Harry.
Mm-hmm.
So the next page, the goblin, Harry puts on the helmet and he goes, my father always talked about the difference between being a boy and a man, and maybe he was right, but maybe you are too. Am I a boy? Am I a man? Am I a hero or something else? I guess we're about to find out. And that's when the comic ends. And he puts the helmet on. It's discovering what kind of person, what kind of man, what kind of being he's going to be now that he has this responsibility that he's taken on himself. So, what do you think
Yeah.
of the end of these last couple pages and the comic overall?
Yeah, holy shit, what an ending, you know?
Yeah.
Um, this comic constantly feels like it's about to like explode and then
Mhm.
doesn't. Like not in a bad way, because every like it does feel like it's essential story and character stuff we're getting. It's not wheel spinning, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Hickman doesn't do that. Um, that the bullseye reveal, like kind of like that's when I was like, oh shit, like Harry might not know how to do this just like properly.
Yeah,
Uh,
no. I mean, I think it was during their fight where Bullseye was just like, your moves are sloppy. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like, it was called out because Harry does it because he's a rich guy that just put on his suit.
yeah. And you mentioned the eye patch thing too.
Mhm.
And it's like, is there some like other universe lore about the maker? Like, is there like a
Oh
consensus
shit! Does he?
on?
Did he lose his eye? I think he did actually lose his
No,
eye.
I don't know. Like, I don't know anything. I don't remember anything about this character. I don't know anything about
Mm-hmm.
this character. So, I'm just like theorizing if we're like remixing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like the obvious like choice for who that character is would be like a Nick Fury reveal or something like that, right? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
that's the route they're going. But that's what I thought when I saw that again. And then it
Mm-hmm.
took me a second, like, oh yeah, that was Bullseye. You know? Um, but yeah, these are killer final pages. And yeah, it feels like they know how to to remix. Hickman knows how to like remix the story elements and also make them stand on their own. Like they're not just like touching up flavors of the week or something. Like he has like a real story he's telling here, and it just happens to be with pieces from uh other people's sandboxes that we know, and like which is very similar to how Harry is building himself up in
Mm-hmm.
this universe, you know? So
That's
I'm
really
willing to bet
funny.
Hickman like really likes writing Harry here.
Yeah, I feel like he does really want to dive into Harry almost a little more so than Peter, but he does great work with Peter. But now all I can think about every time I see Spider-Man, I need a little quotation that says "Feet Hickman" on it. I just think that's really funny. But any closing overall thoughts on this issue?
Uh, Artist Marco Cicchetto returns for the finale of the first arc on sale in June, and that's a
On
hell of a
sale,
cover. It looks like
yeah, they're
they have to
fighting.
stick to that one.
They better.
Yeah. Um, if at the very least, like they're not going to come to blows
Mhm.
with Kingpin, it like something's got to happen because Cicchetto was working on it for 2 months. So
You know, this could be sort of their first real conflict, you know.
Hmm.
Goblin's like, I know where Kingpin is, I'm gonna fucking kill him. And Peter's like, whoa, okay, kill, like kidnapping people and throwing them in your dungeon, I get, but murder? Like
Yeah.
maybe that'll be their first conflict. Or maybe Peter would be into it. You don't know, that'd be interesting if Peter was like, you know what? My fucking aunt died from that explosion. Fucking kill him. Fucking do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
you
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I don't
Who
know.
knows?
That would
That'd be
I feel
wild.
like a conversation would have to be had with his little girl about that, you know?
Mm. Like daddy killed someone. Sorry, sweetie.
Yeah.
But
Like, oh
also he's an
geez.
adult. He's not like an idealized teen. He's an adult who understands. Yeah, fuck. Sometimes you have to put people down. I don't know what to tell you.
That's a conversation we'll
Ooh,
have if we
ooh,
cross that
Kingpin.
bridge.
Ooh, but
Yeah.
I'm excited to pick up. Ultimates comes out this upcoming month, so that'll be interesting. But anything you wanna? I really enjoyed the issue. Anything you wanna plug while we're at the end?
Yeah, check out my Twitter, the Diego Crespo, and everything on the Waffle Press. We're doing a lot of stuff like constantly right now. It's a lot of fun. And so check it out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Go ahead, go all those places.
Yeah,
Waffle Press Movie Podcast.
all that stuff and my stuff will be linked in the description down below. Um, Goodbye.